So a lot of people are using creditors and ways of having their money flow in and out that aren't reporting to these business bureaus. So they're not getting the credit that they could have gotten to have zero personal guarantees and big corporate credit lines.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the Planman. Finance, insurance, and more.
Welcome to Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein. I believe each and every one of us need to live a proactive planning life. Planning, it comes to you in all shapes and sizes: financial plan, college plan, tax plan, estate plan. Today, I'm being joined by Brian Trask with JGault, and we're going to be talking about how business owners can improve, influence, and access credit directly through the business without personal guarantees, without using their own credit cards, and get into an unknown space that most small business owners know nothing about, yours truly included. So when I met Brian, I'm like, this is something we need to talk about and get into our small business owners' hands and understand what they can do to improve how they get and access, build at credit, scoring and access to credit. So Brian, welcome to Ask the Planman. Tell us a little bit about JGault. And I know you've got an interesting journey that got you to this point, but tell us about JGault, what exactly it is, and how you're helping people through the struggles that you've encountered.
Hey, Bruce. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So JGault is a software as a service, right? Or SaaS, as it is more commonly known on the internet these days with our acronyms. So when you get access to JGault Financial Suite, we are not a lender, so I want to make sure that's clear to your audience, is we are not lenders, but we are building your entity through a common practice with lenders that are going to report positive experiences and transactions to business credit bureaus. So there's 4 business credit bureaus. One you've probably heard of called Dun & Bradstreet. 2 and 3 are Experian and Equifax Business. So there is a personal and a business bureau to both Equifax and Experian. And then there is Credit Safe, which is the 4th one. So when you are looking at getting corporate trade lines for your business, those lenders are going to look to those bureaus through your EIN number, your tax ID number for your business for credibility. So a lot of people don't have a credible business entity, and we are showing them with the software which lenders to work with, because like I said, only 7% of lenders are reporting a positive payment experiences to business credit bureaus. Everyone's happy to report the negative ones, unfortunately, but we want to make sure there's certain ones that it's money and time on their end to report positive experiences. So we're showing you which ones you're pre-qualified for. You'll see your business credit score. You'll be able to look at any other legal business in the United States, which is handy because if you're going to be partnering with somebody, it might be good to see if they're paying their bills. And there's a using our software as well through the 12 months or so that we work together to get you from tier 1 to tier 4 corporate trade lines and a business credit score of 80 plus.
And so most people are going to be familiar with the personal side. So when you hear credit score of 700, 800, how does that translate when you say 80? Is it just dropping a 0 and it's kind of the same ratio, or what does it mean on the business side?
No, that's a great question, Bruce. So 350 to 850 is the personal credit scale. Everyone's pretty familiar with that, I'm assuming. But for a business entity, it is graded 0 to 100, and 0 being high risk and then 100 being no risk to a lender. So you want to get your score as high as you can, and we strive to at least get an 80 mark on there.
Okay.
So what's a common misconception with this is there's these three main types of credit, right? There's personal, there's business, which is a hybrid of personal and business, right? It's linked to a business bank account that you got set up with your entity. However, it is still being contrived of your personal credit for the limits and interest rates that it gives you. And then
Right.
there's corporate. A corporate trade line is strictly based off of that entity and its credibility, right? So it goes off the EIN number, or for lack of better term, it's the social security number for your business.
Right.
And so you don't want to use your social security number to fund your business. You want to use the EIN and have everything in that entity.
So on that note, Brian, does it matter what kind of entity people have? Like, do they need to be incorporated, sole proprietor, LLC, partnerships? Like, there's different ways that businesses get registered, some for different reasons. Is there is there a blockage or limit on how, not limit, but a requirement when you say corporate trade lines? Like, we're an LLC, right? I'm a sole. We file our taxes under a Schedule C type of process, so it just flows through. We take our deductions and flows through to me as the owner. Is that different than if I'm Microsoft, right? It's a corporation, and then they make distributions to shareholders in different way. Obviously, a much larger entity, but is there a difference in this? Credit scoring and corporate trade lines? Like, does it matter what they're registered as? Was where I was going.
That's a great question, Bruce. And no, it doesn't. So we've actually even worked with nonprofits, right, which is a different type of entity, and even a church. So we are strictly using that EIN number, right? So if you have a registered entity, whether it's LLC, S Corp, C Corp, 1099, if you have a EIN number, that is what we are building the credibility for, right? So it's an entity with its own tax ID number. However you, the business owner, have it set up with the state or taxed, is completely fine. We can work with them. Now, where we get more or less success is depending on the transactions and money flow of the business, right? If you have 7 figures flowing out of your business every month, compared to $500 or $600, that's going to have a different result, right?
Sure.
So, but yes, any entity with the EIN number is what I can work with. So we've had several different kinds that we've worked with so far.
So let's talk about application a little bit, right? Let's put rubber to the road here a little bit. And so I set up my business. I put some personal capital in. I'm cash flow centric. And then we start to qualify and get a business credit card, or at least it's in the business name. But as you already referenced, it's under my social security number. If my credit is not good, I'm going to get declined to try and get a personal credit card. And so I get that. Now I'm responsible for it, even though I and the business are one and the same. But depending on what type of business somebody has, they might need to buy vehicles, they need equipment. We're in services, right? So we just sell insurance and work with people and get paid commissions from different avenues. And then, we invest back in the business, like the show and advertising and things like that. But if I'm a manufacturer, if I'm I got a bread distribution, I need trucks, I'm a manufacturer, I have larger needs or thirst for money, lines of credit, as people refer to. And so I don't want to be on the hook, is really what you're trying to ring the bell about, is like, hey, this shouldn't be your personal responsibility. It's the business, right? That's the backbone of this. And then my questioning in some of this is, how long, if take Bruce and Weinstein Wealth Insurance Solutions, I've yet to use anything with an EIN per se, except filing my, so-called taxes. So what's the timeline? You said something earlier about a 12-month. What does it look like or take for somebody to build a score potentially to reach 80?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're correct. I did mention a timeline. So we benchmark 12 months. And that's typically on the longer end. And I say that because if you have an established business, right? Let's say you've been in business for 20 years and you're a plumber. And you're buying equipment, you're doing jobs, there's money flowing in and out, and you're booked out for a while. You're a 20-year-old plumbing business. So you are very well established, right? It's because we actually there's three main things these creditors will look at right from the get-go is how long have you been at your current address, your email, and your website domain. So some plumbers, they use Gmail or Hotmail domain, right? And to a corporate lender, that makes you look like a garage band business, even if you're not. Even if you do $8 million a year in revenue, if you have a Hotmail, Bruce at Hotmail for his plumbing business. So making sure that all of the time of business address, website looks good, email looks good. There's some administrative things that we do on the first couple of meetings. However, a lot of people already have that squared away, so we can keep cruising. So we are taking the transactions that you're doing every single day in your business, right? Purchase orders, accounts receivable, your payroll, your rent, your utilities, all of these things. And we are reporting these positive transactions to those four business credit bureaus that I mentioned, right? And the reason we do that is because when your EIN has all these positive dollars and transactions every month, then you start to build history. Right. And there's money behind that. For instance, when I was 18, I got my first credit card. It was $500 a month, and I used it responsibly. And I think I probably had a 720 credit score or something. However, if I wanted to go get $100,000, I was nowhere close, right? To qualify. But it's because my doesn't have the history and the dollars behind it. But somebody my dad's age, he might have had a credit score of 650, lower than mine, but he did have access to $100,000 of credit. And it's because of the history and all the payment experiences, right? It's the same thing with your business. So a lot of people are using creditors and ways of having their money flow in and out that aren't reporting to these business bureaus. So they're not getting the credit that they could have gotten to have zero personal guarantees and big corporate credit lines. So as we're working with you, you'll see the lenders you're pre-qualified for in our software, right? So you don't have to apply and hope you get it. Some of these are industry specific, right? So if you're a plumber, like I mentioned, could be for, hardware store type materials and things that wouldn't apply to another business, but it's specific to you. So after a year, we're reporting more and more and more. Obviously, we tell our clients to use your lines of credit responsibly, right? Because if you salt your business responsibility like your personal, it's the same effect. And then after that time period, we usually have you at an 80 plus, but the bigger picture isn't just the score, it's how much money you have access to. So think of hundreds of thousands of dollars of no personal guaranteed funds, right? Where, God forbid anything bad happened to your business, your personal finances are not affected because they didn't use Bruce's social security number. You didn't leverage Bruce's house. You didn't use Bruce's personal credit card to buy all those job materials. Not that I'm telling anyone this because they can just go bankrupt a business. However, the wall between your personal finances and your business finances is completely separated.
Yeah. Well, you just hear time and again, somebody wants to rent office space. Landlord wants a personal guarantee. Everybody wants a personal guarantee because they don't want to be holding the bag. And the contracts are usually, if not always, written in favor of them, not the person that's, buying and using the service. And so push comes to shove, that business owner is going to be holding the bag at the end and not the other side of the relationship. So this is helping people build up and ultimately, let's use the term, put a firewall between their personal finances and their business. And so I question, because you mentioned the four lenders, Experian and Equifax being also on the consumer side versus D&B and Credit Safe. Does anything translate? Like if you and I were to get started, I've got history with Experian and Equifax. Is any of that translate over for at least a little bit of a kickstart, or is it really just a brand new slate?
Well, so I guess it's going off of your EIN number, right? So if you're looking at Bruce's personal credit and then Bruce is a member of an LLC that has an EIN number, which I could go look that up, right? And nothing transfers over from your personal to your business entity, right? So, and I'm saying bad remarks or anything like that. Now, we have transferred people's debt that is on their personal side over to their entity because it was business related, and that way they'll get a cheaper interest rate on the debt, so they'll get ahead on it better. And then, of course, it's not personally guaranteed to them.
Right.
God forbid anything happens, so they have that security blanket. But I guess to your question is, if Bruce has an 820 personal credit score, it doesn't mean your business is going to have any good credit, right? Because it's like two separate people.
You're still starting from scratch. So you mentioned better credit rates, or lending rates. So can you give some sense of that? So like your average consumer credit card can be upwards of 30%, right? 18, 24. I've seen stuff now in close to 40%. So, that stuff's gotten pretty astronomical. But are we referring to using the EIN in the business space? Is it more getting proper lending or different lending from the bank and institutions versus a credit card? Or is it potentially just a corporate credit card that has more, beneficial rates, more in like if I were to take my one credit card with Capital One and now go through this process, get my EIN to a point, is Capital One going to give me a better credit card for my business at a better rate that I can get rid of the first one and bring it over here so that I'm not at a 24% interest rate? Is that kind of what we're talking? Or is it now I can go to Chase and I can get a line of credit up to $100,000 at, a revolving rate of whatever, prime plus, some numbers, which could be half of what a credit card charges? I mean, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's three main elements to having a corporate credit line for your business, and it's lower interest rates, 10 to 100 times the limit that your personal credit allows. So you have lower rates, you have access to more capital, and then you're not personally guaranteeing the capital, right? So, and even I'll challenge some of your listeners to do this. If you own a business and you have a credit card for your business, take the credit card out of your wallet. If it says business credit card on it, that has a personal guarantee. If it says corporate credit card on it, that is a no personal guarantee card. So it does get a little confusing because you have your business credit score, you have business credit bureaus, but you want a corporate credit line, right? Because you'll say like business credit line, business credit card, and it's tricky, right? The terminology is tricky, but I didn't create it. I just had to learn it. But yes, so like for instance, one example, and this is on my website, Bruce. One of our testimonials, he got a work truck. It was $50,000 work truck for 1.9% interest because it was a corporate credit line, right? And obviously work trucks, they get beat to all hell, as they do. And sometimes you just can't keep up with repairing them. So you need to get a new one. And I know interest rates are crazy right now. But yeah, when you have a business that in the eyes of these credit bureaus is doing, for his business, he was doing a couple $100,000 a month in and out. And we were reporting all these transactions, like I mentioned, right? So it makes that business entity look responsible with $50,000 if hundreds of thousands of dollars are doing this and getting paid for constantly.
My experience, I don't buy, we're not buying equipment here per se. I tend to pay for other services. So, the credit card paying for a conference I go to or some software, things of that nature is more mine. I'm not a manufacturer that needs, a line of credit between their billing cycles and receivables. So it varies and needs. Earlier, you mentioned the trades and the plumber. So why don't we give people kind of your ideal business, your avatars, the wording people say, but like for these tools, what would be maybe the top 3 or 5 businesses? Like maybe an insurance agency owner like us and my other listeners may not be that prototypical client that benefits as much as like a plumber or other tradespeople. So give us a breakdown of like who should be thinking about using you on a higher level first, and then where else you might have influence. Because as anybody else's, their client base is usually 80-20, right? 80% of my clients are 20% of my revenue, and these are my top clients. So what would you identify as your top?
Yeah, I would say the trades are definitely at the top, which I know that it's a variety of industries, right? So the trades, construction, restaurants are up there. And then I would say pretty much a service-based business as well. So basically, these are businesses that are transacting a lot, right? That they have a lot in and out. And that is where, they're not getting credit for their positive transactions, right? And that's what we help fix.
You mentioned plumbing before. So my buddy's a plumber, and literally just the other day, he said something to me. He uses his Amex card, and he doesn't like or understand or get much value out of their point system. And you see, like, he buys a lot of material, right? He's buying plumbing material and toilets and water heaters and, pipes and, whatever it is, big or small. So there's a lot of transactions. He charges the client. He goes to Home Depot or whomever, plays plumbing suppliers. He's plopping it down and, he's financing it or paying for it through his credit card. And then he gets points, he gets rewards, he gets mileage, whatever it is. So in that case, he could be using something. I don't know if Amex is in the fold, I liked what you said, and I kind of circled it. There's a difference of whether your card says a corporate on it or a business on it. So that's important out there for my listeners. See what kind of card you have to really understand what you're using. But then you see commercials for Capital One. I always forget the name of it. And, people, it maybe starts with an S. It's like a green card. But people say they run all their purchases and services through their Capital One card, and they get 2% cash back, which then, at least that particular ad said, we can now afford to offer our employees health insurance. Like, they used that 2% cash back to put back into the business, right? So if you're cash flowing products and goods and in and out, where the client's paying you, you're getting a markup, you're going out and buying it, delivering it to them, doing the work. Well, you're creating a lot of transactions, which certainly sounds like would influence in a positive way their EIN scoring, right?
Yes.
And then the question is, if you're carrying a balance, a lot of Amexes require full payment at the end of the month, but some do allow for revolving and carrying a balance. But, then the question is, like, what's your lending rate? What's your borrowing rate? So if I have a receivables business, I'm in the clothing manufacturing and I'm giving everybody, T plus 90, I'm getting 90 days for you to pay me. Well, I got to keep paying my people. I got to keep manufacturing stuff, but I'm not going to get paid for 90 days. I need lines of credit, right? I got to go order more stuff from my manufacturer. I need a $250,000 line of credit. And so while I'm carrying that balance, I'm paying interest. Well, do I want to pay interest at 24% or do I want to pay it at 10%?
Exactly. Right? You have it right on the money.
So on the back end of this, you mentioned helping work with lenders. So as part of your service/software, and I'm going to draw in Credit Karma, for lack of a better tool because that's something I'm familiar with and a lot of people use, which is on the retail, right? The personal side.
Yep.
So you go on Credit Karma, it's going to give you a couple of your credit reportings.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to show you things on how your credit scores are going up and down. By the way, we have an episode about 2 years back for those who want to go back to our YouTube library where I have conversation on how your credit scores are impacted and the do's and don'ts to influence. And this is on the personal side. So now we're having Brian here to talk about the business side. Like this is new information. So we booked Brian on the show because I'm like, okay, I don't know this exists. So I'm doing this stuff a long time. So people need to know this. And so the Credit Karma, when you go on there and start participating and giving it more information and it accesses your credit cards, it starts to recommend things.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a high likelihood of qualifying for this card. You've got a poor level of getting that card. And then it feeds you other vehicles. I mean, they're cross-selling in a sense. I'm sure that's where they're making their money, but whoever's backing them and feeding them to be a sponsor, Capital One or the like, is they're promoting you getting some credit. So is that my long-winded question setting this up is that tied in with the services? Like once we start getting Bruce's EIN built up for his company, now we're starting to see who's willing to come to the table and give you $25,000 line of credit, $100,000 line of credit, a loan for a commercial vehicle. Is that the back end of this? Is that part of the so what?
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy, Bruce, because you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Think of this as a Credit Karma for your business on steroids. Is, essentially like you get to look at your score. As I mentioned, you can also look at other businesses' credit scores, which is public information just for anyone out there who's wondering. And there's a reason for that, right? Because if you're, I know we keep going back to the plumber example, but if you're a plumber and you're looking at partnering with another service business, another trade, and you look and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy never pays his bills. Like, am I going to be the next guy who he doesn't pay back? And I'm not even an official lender reporting anything bad on him. Or they could be very responsible with all their money and they could look great and that could rest easy on you. But also somebody can look at your stuff on there as well. So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, I had a buddy that was working with the big box sporting goods stores.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's a little guy with a niche product and worked very hard to get into the Dick's and the sporting goods and, whoever's out there in that realm. And he's competing for shelf space. He's competing against Nike and Under Armour and Louisville Slugger and, name all the different top brand, Titleist. Like these are big brand names that have the shelf space and, he doesn't want his product in the back of the store. He wants it, as it comes in the front. But the point behind my story is that if you don't cooperate and give them the terms that they require, as an example, and I'm only going by his conversations, like Nike might send $1 million of inventory to every store. Let's just say Dick's, because I think Sports Authority is out of business, which burned him, which is where I was leading with this. He got burned by Sports Authority going under because they owed him $250,000 for his inventory. Now, if he had this software or access to maybe he could see that Sports Authority's credit is getting very diminished and bashed, and maybe decided to not give them more inventory or pull back. But again, as a small guy, $250,000 is painful to him. At the same time, he doesn't want to lose the business, right? So there's that double-edged sword. But in essence, from what I've learned, is Nike takes the shelf space, gives it to Dick's. Dick's doesn't pay a penny till it's sold. And anything that doesn't sell, they send back. So the store is virtually on the hook for next to nothing from a cash flow standpoint and only pays Nike Now, Nike's big enough to absorb it, and there's millions of transactions that go on. But, you think about that dynamic. How am I, if I'm making the next hot little sneaker, how do I give Nike the same terms? Sorry, not Nike. It's the sporting goods store, the same terms that they're getting from Nike. I can't wait a year to get paid. I can't wait for the sale to get paid. Like my credit lines are limited. I don't have $1 billion of a publicly traded company's, cash reserves, right? Or lines of credit. And so how does the little guy become the mid-sized guy becomes the big guy is, these are things that are certainly vital for those who are seeking that in that space of like, I need access to more money. I need access to cheaper money, right? If I'm paying if I got 20% carrying costs, what's happening to my profit margin if I have to wait 6 months or a year? And then if I can get it down to 8% or 12%, well, that helps my profit margin a little bit or helps me be more competitive on my pricing or whatever.
What you mentioned is exactly what I tell people. And this is like, think about the show Shark Tank, right? What is everybody on Shark Tank? They have a business, most of them have revenue, and it's almost always, we need capital to buy more inventory, or we need to lease, whatever the case is. Well, what if you just had the capital and you didn't have to sell 30% of your company to somebody else or whatever, right?
Right.
Like one of our greatest case studies is a business that did $2.5 million a year in revenue. Bruce, they're an established business, 10 years running, $2.5 million in revenue every year. Just take a guess how much their corporate credit limit was when we started working with them.
$5,000.
You're close. It was $10,600 on a company that does $2.5 million of revenue every year. And now they have about $1 million of corporate credit lines attached to that business. Wow. That's one thing is it depends on the transaction of your business, how much revenue you're doing, right? Like if you do $100,000 a year in revenue, it's not likely that you're going to have $1 million of trade lines, sure, right? But when so I would even say it can be safe to benchmark 50% of your revenue. If it's all going in and out quite a bit, you can benchmark 40 or 50% of your revenue is like a safe measure, I think, on how much corporate credit you could get. But every business has variables, right? Every single business is unique.
Yeah.
How they use the capital, like for instance, if somebody signs up, but they don't show up to their meetings, like I can't guarantee you anything. When that happens every once in a while, it's like, hey, we haven't gotten a hold of you for 2 or 3 months. Did you open this credit line? Did you, X, Y, and Z? So
you can't be a spectator. It's a participation sport, right? It's not a spectator sport.
You cannot, but
so
go ahead.
No. So as we start to wind down, let's talk about your process, right? Like we're going to post your contact information, but how does somebody get a hold of you? Let's put it here for the listener out there that's not visually watching and seeing the show notes, but let's give a shout out to your contact information and then give us a sense of a starting point, like what level, what minimum size business should even be entertaining this? What kind of starting point from an investment standpoint? Like I don't normally have stuff on here with products and things people could buy as much as information, but this is a service that the small business owner needs to think about. So as they're listening to this, what's a jumping off point to at least getting started? You mentioned it's about a year-long process. Let's just get in the weeds a little bit about that expectation. It's a monthly call, a weekly call, like you're going to give them homework. So you're holding their hand and taking them through the process, which is part of what they're paying for. It sounds like it's not just I'm giving you a cookbook and go do it yourself.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So that relationship is you're getting Brian and his consultative expertise in here. There's going to be a service fee, a relationship fee of some kind. And then you're going to walk them through, get them going with steps that are going to help them establish this EIN lining of credit, which it seemed like 12 months is the journey to where they'll start to see their scores eligible for qualifying. And then ultimately, as we were saying with the Credit Karma comparison, is you'll be able to, or they'll be able to at least see options on the corporate borrowing side. Is that a good summary of all of the steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
like what you mentioned is, so we need at least a year. So that's our lowest membership, is a year. And
Okay.
just for your listeners, anyone who's saying they can do these things in like a month or 2 months, is full of crap. And I say that because we are and here's the misconception. There's people who can make your score jump up quickly, but it's the dollars allocated to you that matters, right? Like I'm working with somebody right now. He has business credit at 84, but he's like, I couldn't get the Mercedes Sprinter van that I wanted. And I said, well, because it goes back to my previous comment, you're not reporting all these things to your business, right? So your business looks low risk, which is good,
Right.
but you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars going in every month. The Sprinter van's 200 grand. So you look small dollar to the business credit bureaus, and therefore you're not getting all of that stuff. So getting back into your question, so we need at least a year because we want to make sure, for one, we have a money back guarantee. So everyone knows. So if you work with us for a year and you meet with us in all our meetings and you do everything that we say, and you don't get these results, then we'll give you your money back, right? So it's a zero risk to you, but it's an interactive process. So in the beginning, I did mention this earlier, it's a little more, we do some administrative research and cleanup on your business. So that way it looks bulletproof to the bureaus and to those lenders. And then we start you off on smaller cards, right? Some of these cards that are corporate cards, believe it or not, it could for you to, if you have to go out and depending on where where your business is started at, if you have to go out and buy office supplies and toilet paper on your corporate credit card, then just do it. If you use it, pay it off, use it, pay it off. I don't care what you buy with it, as long as it's something that you need, obviously, and use it responsibly. But as we are getting also the information from you, from your purchase orders, your accounts receivable, your payroll, your utilities, sometimes with the landlord stuff, if you're leasing, there's a third party we use depending on your lease situation to get it reported. But as these things report over months, then we say, oh, you're pre-qualified for a card that's now 20,000, and now you're pre-qualified for a line of credit that's 100,000. So you will see in your own login that you're going to be reaching these tiers of credit, and when you get to tier 4 credit, which is at pretty much the end of our program and what we strive for, that is where you're getting big dollar amounts, right? You're able to get commercial vehicles, commercial real estate, for low interest, right? Like if you want to buy that brick and mortar space for your business instead of renting it, or whatever the case may be. But that is where the money is really hits the road, is vehicles, real estate, high dollar amounts, so you can stay in business or expand your business. And so we do have lifetime memberships as well, but again, it's a minimum of 1 year. And that's because we want to get everything cruising and reporting. Mark a couple $1,000s to invest into this, just for the listeners. And I think it comes back 100x. If you even just look at how much you're spending in interest every year, that alone is going to make it pay for itself.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, not having personal guarantees, right? Because no major business operates like that, right? Like if Walmart opens up,
Bill Gates isn't on the hook.
Exactly. Yeah. Walmart, when they open up a new Walmart, the Walmart family doesn't have their house. They're not pulling equity out of their house to make that happen. Right. right? But then you're like, well, I don't have access to this. It's just you have to prove yourself or your business entity, right? Um, and the other famous example is like Trump's whole like Taj Mahal thing that
Right.
did very poorly. And so people, start to think like, well, how come Trump's personal credit didn't go through the ringer and Trump didn't lose his penthouse in New York? He had a failing business that was millions of dollars and he bankrupted it and closed it. And again, I'm not telling you this to bankrupt your business, but I'm saying it
Those
provides
are the
you
rules.
protection.
Those are like what you're allowed to do.
Exactly.
Well, like we said earlier, the word is you're putting a firewall between that. Trump didn't lose his personal residence.
Mm-hmm.
He catches a lot of heat for having had businesses go bankrupt, but that's what bankruptcy laws are for. And if you've got a failing business and you have debt, he couldn't negotiate it down. Atlantic City was going through struggles. I've been to his properties down there when I lived in New Jersey, and Atlantic City went through some struggles, and he's not the only one that closed their doors.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's what the rules are for. So sounds like only a few $1,000s to get started. If depending on the listener there, like where, like what I'll give you an example. Like when I started this business, we're now in our 4th year, and we had a secured credit card for $500, right? I had to put money in, get a card, and that was my credit line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got, in my fraternity brothers, I've spoken on this in the past, gave us some seed money, and we got started. Like we just started doing eventually the card where they dropped the security against it, and then the line kept getting larger, and then eventually a local credit union gave us a business credit card and a car loan, and so as our credit was getting built up, but it was all on the personal side because we had lost the business, we had gone through a bankruptcy, and so we were unestablished. We were declines every time we went to a major center bank. Yep. Chase and Bank of America don't want to lend us money. My local credit union did a couple years ago. We showed some financials and revenue, and they're like, yeah, we'll give you a credit card. We'll give you a car loan. And I'm like, really? Like we were so excited. And then it expanded from there. So, but I'm still on the hook for everything personal. It's in my name. It has my business name on the card, but if I default, it's my social security number. Like it's not insulated. So for somebody starting, somebody newer in the business, is there, more like a timeline? Is there a better time than others? I mean, obviously if let's just say it's a $2,000 starting point with you, like if somebody's starting a new business today, is $2,000 where they should put their money to get this started? Or should they get some revenue going, get some things built up, maybe get to 50, 100, 200,000 in revenue and sales, and then come to, like, what's more ideal for you for success? Like where do you help better with people? Obviously the more established they are, that's easier to transition, but like new people want to start a new business every day, right? There's people out there, they're buying franchises, they're doing things. And again, I would assume those franchises are being purchased with personal guarantees and personal money. And, they have to rent space and get a truck, and, we help people get their insurances in that wheelhouse. So, we come across those. Are they structuring it properly? Are they using their own personal lines of credit and access, and then vulnerable? Like, so am I asking this question the right way, Brian? Is when's a good time or the best time for somebody to get started in this? Is it newer? Is it a little bit more seasoned and established?
I think that's a very good question, Bruce. I would think that you need to get your business cash flowing some before coming to me and JGault. And I say that because that's where you're going to get your results, especially if you're like clinging on. I mean, if you're starting a new business and you have all the money in the world, then that's different. But normally, most people don't start a business and have access to all the money in the world. So you want to make sure you're cash flowing. That's like number one priority, that you're staying above water. I've actually turned a couple of people away for this exact reason, is because I want to make sure I can actually help them. Like they don't have money flowing in and out of their business. And if they don't have that, then Where that's not where the rubber's going to meet the road with us, right? But if you have money going in and out, and you have I would say a couple $100,000 a year in revenue at the minimum, which is still a pretty small.
I'm looking
business.
for a baseline.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for as a baseline. If somebody's like, if you're doing 50 grand, maybe it's not time to call Brian. You're doing a couple $100,000, then maybe it's time. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And then also your longevity in that business too, right? Because I notice usually people have one of two exits for a business. They're either building it up and then they're going to sell it for a profit, or they're going to pass it down to a family member or someone close to them of some sort. And for one, I can tell you this: if you have huge corporate trade lines on your business, like how much more do you think that's worth when you're evaluating it at the end of the day? Which we also do valuations in a part of our program. So every year we'll give you a free business valuation, which is not cheap, by the way. When I was looking into how many people pay to get their business valuated, oh my gosh, it could be like 12 grand.
It's definitely a 5-figure.
Yeah. And we use biz equity. So, it's not like a uncommon, like new startup type of a thing that we do. It's a very established valuating tool, and you'll get every year a piece of paper that says, this is what my business is worth with enterprise value, liquidation value, asset value. And in that way, you'll have at least a certificate, no matter what happens in your life, that, all right, if I need to get rid of this, this is what it's worth. But yeah, I think going back to your question, you need to have some cash flow, some revenue for this to really meet the road. And we do speculate we evaluate every person we work with and their business to see if it's going to be a good fit. Because I don't want any upset customers either, right? Like, if you're
we can't help everyone.
Yeah, if you're a squeaky new business, there isn't a lot of in and out. You're not going to see the major benefits of, if you've been a construction company for 25 years, there's millions of dollars going here and there, then like that's something that we can really boost you with. But yeah.
I have a closing question here, because I know you're based out of Fort Lauderdale. You're not that far from us down here in South Florida, but my listeners are all over.
Okay.
Right. So are you regionalized? Can you work anywhere in the country? If they come to you, we're going to give them your phone number and email. As long as they come to you, can you help anybody nationally, or are you limited?
That's a great question. And yes, I can help any business in the United States, any established business with an EIN number, like we've been talking about. Okay. So, Fort Lauderdale.
So give us your
side. Yeah.
So give us your phone number. How do you want people to call you?
Yeah.
What number?
My direct line to reach me is 425-327-0866. Please send me a voicemail or a text if I miss you, because I'm in meetings all the time. So please leave me some sort of message so I can return your call. And
okay. And then I got B Trask, Trask at JGault, JGALT.io.
That's
as
correct.
An email.
Yep, that's my email.
And then do you want to send them to the website, or pretty much just call or email you?
I would say call or email. My website it's similar to my email. It's jgault.io/btrask. So it's kind of like my email, but
combination.
But I guess I do. It is nice to plug my website. There's like a lot of information on there for anybody to chew on, and then I have my schedulers on there. So if you want to schedule time to meet with me and go through your business one-on-one, always happy to do that. And
okay.
I think the website.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
We'll put all three in the show notes. People can check that out. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I would say 9 out of 10 business owners don't know their business credit, and they don't know how much money they have access to, and they almost all have personal guarantees. So I would take a step back and look at, if your business were, for one, to go belly up, which I hope does not happen, how would that affect you and your family? And then two is if you could take 40% of your revenue as a safe number, and if you had access to 40% of your revenue as working capital, how would that change your business if you weren't personally guaranteed to it?
Powerful. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us, folks. I hope this has been informative. We talked about a lot of different things, getting corporate trade lines and getting credit, as Brian just said, off of your personal guaranteed side onto your business side, helping you get access to more credit, grow and expand your business. Certainly, depending on the type of business that you have, and you're handling a lot of cash flow in and out of your business, you might be costing yourself thousands and thousands of dollars by misappropriating your credit scoring, your price of credit, your lending rates. All this is so important. So I hope you got some value out of today's episode, a little bit more driven towards the small business owner, the entrepreneur, franchisees out there. All this you can take advantage of. Again, my name's Bruce Weinstein. This is another episode of Ask the Planman. If you have any questions, concerns, or interests, you reach out to myself. We'll get in touch with Brian or reach out to him directly. You give me a call at 844-PLANMAN. Go to planman.tv. We're on Apple TV, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere on your podcast channels, YouTube. If you need some advice, always get it right. Come Ask the Planman. Until next time, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. I hope people take action and help improve their business scorings, credit access. I know it's something I'm going to be pursuing. I know it's something I'm going to be pursuing with you. But until next time, we'll see you then.
Thanks, Bruce.
Some advice.